Barukot habaot, ladies, and welcome to another edition of our weekly Torah classes. And if you're logging on to Torah anytime or to ohelserah.com, as you know, we are so happy that you tune in, that you follow our shiurim, my shiurim in specific, and that you give your neshama the spiritual nourishment that it needs in order to survive in this very, very challenging galut. I want to take the time to apologize to you ladies that I skipped a shiur last week and that I'm late in delivering this shiur. I got hit with a very, very bad flu. Seems like it's going around. Everybody in my building and everybody in the neighborhood here in Eretz Yisrael, where I am, got sick, very sick. And I was trying to push myself, and my doctor said no, and my Rabanit said no. I wasn't even able to speak so much last week. Just now, I figured, you know what, I finally got a little bit of my voice back. I'm gonna give this shiur. So I apologize again that I was not able to give the shiur last week. I hope I'll be able to make it up to you with this inspiring shiur. Sadly, this past week, two of my very good friends' fathers passed away suddenly, and I want to dedicate this shiur to both of my friends' fathers, to my good friend Goldie, who was in New York, who was sitting Shiva this past week, to her father Yecheskel Tzvi ben Chaim, alav shalom, who was a very, very special man, a big tzaddik, always doing chesed for people, and a big ohev Yisrael, somebody who loved Klal Yisrael. And also to my very good friend and confidant, a woman that I work with so closely here in Eretz Yisrael when we do our events here, to Ida, my sound person, my right-hand person, whose father passed away last week suddenly, Yehuda ben Ida Dudu. So these two men should, first of all, have an aliyat neshama, and they should be melitzei yosher for all of Klal Yisrael. And whatever inspiration, ladies, you take upon yourself from this shiur should give these two men, these two neshamot, actually in Shamayim, tremendous aliyah, tremendous elevation. Ladies, this week's parasha is YITRO. The Torah in this parasha mentions the names of Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom's two sons and why Moshe gave them their names. One son was Gershom, the other son was Eliezer. Why was Eliezer named Eliezer? The pasuk states, and I quote, Elokei avi be'ezri vayatzileni mecherev paro. The God of my father came to my aid and rescued me from Paro's sword. Moshe names his son Eliezer as a tribute and gratitude to Hashem for saving his life. How so? Well, when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Mitzrayim, he saved a fellow Jew from an Egyptian taskmaster who was about to kill him. Moshe, if you remember, smote the Egyptian in order to save his fellow brother. But what happened? Datan and Aviram, two rebellious and defiant Jews, betrayed Moshe, and they informed on him to Paro. They were Meiser Moshe. The Midrash of Shemot Rabbah states that when Paro found out that Moshe killed an Egyptian, he actually planned to execute Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu was arrested, forced to bend over, and they were going to bring down the sword upon his head. The Midrash tells us that the sword actually did come down and a miracle occurred. The back of Moshe Rabbeinu's neck turned to marble, and the blade of the sword literally cracked in two as it came down onto his neck. At that point, the executioner was so taken aback and stunned that at that moment of astonishment, it gave Moshe Rabbeinu enough time to run away. So Moshe Rabbeinu never forgot this nes. He never forgot the miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made for him in Egypt. Moshe was on the brink of death, and through Hashem's amazing miracle, he was saved. So he thought, I'm never going to forget this miracle. Elokei avi ba'ezri vayatzileni mecherev Paro. The God of my father saved me from Paro's sword. God, you helped me at the moment that my life was about to be taken from me, and because of that, I'm never going to forget it. So I'm going to name my son Eliezer. God, my God, helped me. Elokei avi ba'ezri. God, you helped me, and for that, I will always be grateful. You know what that means? That means that for the rest of his life, every time Moshe Rabbeinu called his son by his name, Eliezer, he was reminded of that moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helped him and saved him. By naming his son Eliezer, it was like a hakarat hatov. It was a way of thanking and never forgetting the miracle that occurred for him in Egypt. So that was Eliezer. What was Moshe Rabbeinu's other son's name? Gershom. Why did he name him Gershom? The pasuk states, Ger ha'iti be'eretz nochriya. I was a stranger in a foreign land. As we know, Moshe Rabbeinu fled from Egypt to the city of Midian after having run away. That's where he met his father-in-law YITRO. That's where he met his wife Tzipora. That's where his children were born, in Midian. And according to one midrash, Moshe Rabbeinu lived in Midian for approximately 80 years. The question is Gershom's name significant? I mean, I understand that Moshe felt the reality of living in a foreign land, but because of that, you name your son Gershom? You name your son a stranger in a foreign land? When Moshe Rabbeinu named his son Eliezer, that made sense because HaKadosh Baruch Hu helped him in Egypt by saving his life through that miracle. The name Eliezer is fitting because Moshe Rabbeinu never wanted to forget how HaKadosh Baruch Hu helped him. Eliezer. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Not only that, but every time Moshe referred to his son by that name, he was reminded of the miracle that saved his life in the moments of peril and doom. But the name Gershom, what kind of name is that? Is it really so important to remember that you were a stranger in a foreign land? Ki ger ha'iti be'eretz nochriya. Many Jews live in foreign lands outside of Eretz Yisrael. Why was it so important for Moshe Rabbeinu to remember that he was a stranger in a foreign land to the extent that he named his son Gershom, a name that this child would carry for the rest of his life? Think about it. I mean, this boy is going to be called Gershom for the rest of his life because his father felt that he was a stranger in a foreign land. How strange is that? What's the significance behind this name, Gershom? Not only that, but if we think about the chronological order of events, we see that first Hashem saved Moshe in Egypt from Paro's sword, and that's what caused him to flee to Midian, to this foreign land. So shouldn't Moshe have named his first son Eliezer after the miraculous event that transpired in Egypt, and then his second son Gershom for the fact that he lived in a strange and foreign land? Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't do that. He reverses the order. He names his first son Gershom and his second son Eliezer. That's odd. If you want to remember the events of your life and then name your children after those events, shouldn't they at least follow a chronological order? First you were saved, and then you became a stranger in a foreign land. So that's the question that I have. And the answer, ladies, and the lesson of this entire shiur lies in the incredible insight of the Meshech Chochmah, alav shalom. He writes that when Moshe Rabbeinu was in Egypt during his youth, he grew up in the palace of Paro. Batya, Paro's daughter, the princess of Egypt, retrieved the lone basket from the Nile River, and when she saw little baby Moshe in the basket, she chose to care for him. She brought him back to the palace and raised him as her own son. Moshe Rabbeinu was brought up as the prince of Egypt. For many years, he lived a very lavish life, the life of royalty and the Egyptian palace. But then when he was old enough, he went out to his brothers in the fields and saw their suffering. And it was during one of these outings in the field that the story with the Egyptian taskmaster took place. And that's where Moshe killed him. And that was the event that caused him to flee to Midian and remain there for 80 years. Which means, says the Meshech Chochmah, that for most of Moshe Rabbeinu's life, if you think about it, he was out of harm's way. All those years that he was growing up in Paro's palace, and all those years that he lived in Midian, although they were years of tranquility, says the Meshech Chochmah, Moshe Rabbeinu lived with a voice inside of him that screamed out, "What am I doing here? What am I doing here? My brothers are out there being tortured and beaten. Israel and Egypt were undergoing a Holocaust. The slavery in Egypt wasn't just about reporting to work every day and tending to your taskmaster. Jews were being tortured in ways that no human being should ever experience. Their babies were being ripped out of their mother's arms and thrown into rivers." So Moshe Rabbeinu is remembering this while he's in Midian, and he says, "My brothers are being beaten, they're being slain, and they're suffering through this Holocaust. And I'm sitting here pretty in Midian? I don't belong here. I belong with them. What am I doing in this foreign place when I'm meant to be with my fellow brothers and sisters among Am Yisrael?" So do you know what Moshe Rabbeinu did? Says the Meshech Chochmah, in order to remind himself that he doesn't belong there in that foreign land, in the Eretz Nochriya, in order to remind himself that he needs to go back to his purpose in life, which is the people, he named his first son Gershom. Gershom was a reminder of what? I don't belong here. I have a purpose, and it seems that I'm very far removed from that purpose. I'm very far removed from my essence. I'm far away from my people. I don't belong here. I'm a stranger in a foreign land, Gershom. I'm in a place that's far and foreign compared to where I should be. And every time he called his son Gershom, it was a personal reminder to himself that screamed out from within, "Get out of here. Go back to where you belong. Go back to who you're supposed to be. Go back to your purpose in life. You're not meant to be sitting here in Midian. You're supposed to be with your brothers who are suffering in Egypt. Go back to your purpose. Go back to the Jewish people, to your brothers, and lead them." Wow. So we not only understand why Moshe named his son Gershom, but we understand why he named his first son Gershom. It was because he realized that Eliezer, meaning Elokei Avi Be'ezri, he realized that the only reason why Hashem saved him in the first place was for his real purpose in life, which was to deliver the Jewish people out of bondage. That was his purpose, and that's why he was saved to begin with. So the whole point of Eliezer, of being saved, was only to arrive at Gershom. The reason why Eliezer, the reason why Hashem saved Moshe was for the reminder, was for the wake-up call that he had to have felt in Midian. It was about reminding him that Gershom, he's got to remember the people. Hashem helped Moshe Rabbeinu for the purpose and for the realization of Gershom, for the sake of that voice that was screaming inside of him, what am I doing with my life over here? I'm so far away from my purpose. And that's why I was helped in the first place, for that purpose. And right now, I feel like I'm very, very far away from my calling and what I was meant to do, and for the purpose for which I was saved. When a Jew lives with the idea and the genuine attitude of Gershom, that he's still so far away and still not where he's supposed to be, when we ask ourselves, what are we doing really? And how can we be so complacent? A Jew in a foreign land should have the attitude of Gershom, where he's always wondering, how could I be so comfortable when I know I should be doing so much more? How can I think that I'm really where I'm supposed to be when I'm really living as a stranger in a foreign land? Ger ha'iti be'eretz nochriya. How can I continue to settle in the Eretz Nochriya, planting my roots there, renovating and making myself all too comfortable, when I claim I really need to be with my brothers and sisters who are suffering? When you live with the ideology of Gershom, you live with constant spiritual growth. But if you think you're doing well, because as long as you're in a quasi-Jewish neighborhood that's growing, but you forget that the land, the soil that you're treading upon on a daily basis is foreign soil, that the air that you're breathing is foreign air, it's tumah, that the majority of the people who surround you are nochriim, and you're merely a ger, a stranger in the land, even if you have an American passport, then your vision has sadly been skewed and you have fallen influences to that foreign land. The idea of Gershom is a genuine clarity and vision to know that where you are right now is really just a stepping stone to where you're truly supposed to be, and not the permanent place of residence until you become old and gray and you reach the age of 65 and decide perhaps now it's time to quote-unquote retire to Eretz Yisrael and join your brothers and sisters. We don't retire to Eretz Yisrael. We return to where we belong, to where our purpose truly lies. And hopefully that's before we reach the ripe old age. So the ideology of Gershom is the vision of a person who's constantly living with a self-examination, where after deep reflection, he realizes that he's really not happy being a ger be'eretz nochriya, that he's not comfortable being a ger be'eretz nochriya. It's not the attitude of I'm okay here, I'm okay, I'm comfortable here. It's the introspection that he's supposed to have that leads him to conclude that he's not content with the materialism of life in the foreign land, that he wants more because he feels and he knows that he can do more and be more. And because of that, such a person is not ready to just sit back, put up his feet, and say, well, as long as I have it good, as long as I feel good, As long as I have parnasah, and as long as I have my children and my grandchildren around me, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. No. The concept of Gershom is that it's not about me. It's not about what makes me feel comfortable and good. I wasn't placed in this world just for myself and what makes me happy. Chachamim actually write that there are many, countless neshamot that are placed in this world not for themselves. Most of us were actually placed here for a shlichut, for a mission that we're meant to accomplish that goes beyond ourselves. And that mission isn't the mission that you decide that it is. Some of us think, oh, my mission is to be the best grandmother and the best mother and to love my family and be the best wife and to be the best mother. Are you kidding me? That you have to do that anyway. That's your mission granted. But who decided that that's your only mission in life? And that you were sent down to this world for some other purpose? Sarah was a mother. Sarah was a wife. But she had a purpose and she fulfilled that purpose. Rivka was a mother. Rivka was a grandmother even. But she had another purpose other than just being a mother and a grandmother. Who decided that that's the only purpose that you have in life? You? Why? Because it's convenient for you? Because it doesn't require you to step out of the box and your inner circle? Why? Because it's easier? Most people's shlichut isn't about themselves. Chachamim say that most neshamot are here to complete a mission for the sake of others. And that doesn't just include your family. You were not sent down to the world to be a chasidah she'osa chesed im chavuroteha. You know, the chasidah bird does great acts of kindness, of chesed. That's why she's called the chasidah. But sadly, she only does it with those that are in her circle. That's why she's considered a bird that's not kosher for consumption. Our mission, our shlichut, is for the many among Am Yisrael. Of course, part of our mission is what we're supposed to achieve on a personal level vis-a-vis our own personal life goals. But a much larger part of our mission is what we're supposed to be doing for other people. How many people out there can we influence spiritually? And how many out there can we help to improve? How many people can we help today that we didn't yesterday? You know, we're living in a time that everyone, no matter who they are, has some challenge that they're dealing with. We're all facing nisyonot on an individual level, interpersonal level, and as a nation. Am Yisrael needs people who still care enough to step out of their boundaries, out of their comfort zones, and to become a little bit more involved. We need more selfless Jews to realize what Moshe Rabbeinu realized. What did he realize? Gershom. I'm away from the people I'm supposed to be helping. I've stepped away from the mission that I'm supposed to be delivering. Hashem charged me with such an incredible mission, and I feel so far away. I need to get back on track. So notice what Moshe Rabbeinu was ready to do, and he was willing to go to the utmost degree to do it. You know, I mean, it's one thing to take your smartphone and add a reminder for yourself, next Tuesday at this time, remember to do this and that. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't take the reminder and put it into his phone. He took the reminder and he literally placed it on the most priceless possession that was given to him in this world. His first son, his pride and joy. He literally plastered on Gershom a built-in reminder that every time he calls out his name with love, he'll remember how far he really is from where he's supposed to be. That's the Meshech Chochmah's lesson and what a concept this is, and we're going to continue to elaborate on this idea, because this is the way you learn to identify great people. You identify great people not by what they're ready to do for themselves and for their family, not for the sacrifices they're willing to do for themselves and their family, but on what they're ready to give away for the sake of other people. So I want to tell you an incredible story. The great Ger Rebbe, Alav Shalom, was once on a train traveling through Europe. Now, in the olden days, the train made stops in various cities in Europe. So word got out that the tzaddik, the great Ger Rebbe, was going to be on this train. When the people heard that this tzaddik was going to be stopping in their town, you could imagine what happened on that given day and time that the train pulled into the station. There were thousands of people on the platform waiting for the Rebbe to arrive into their city. And so it was that the Rebbe arrived. He'd go out onto the platform, and between stops, he took the time to bless the people. He offered the people chizuk, some inspiration. He spoke with those who needed words of comfort. And for the few minutes that he had on that platform between stops, he'd give his heart and soul to the people who were standing there. Then, when the whistle blew, he'd step back onto the train, stick his hand out the window, and wish everybody goodbye. And then he went to the next stop. The Rebbe did this at every city they stopped in. Well, guess what? Unbeknownst to the Ger Rebbe, sitting on the same train in a different car was none other than the Chafetz Chaim Alav Shalom, who was himself a big tzaddik and a Talmid Chacham Atzum. The Chafetz Chaim was also traveling from town to town, trying to sell his Mishnah Brura and other holy books that he had written. So when these two great men heard that they were on the same train, they got together in the same car, and they sat together and they began to discuss matters of Torah, as Talmidei Chachamim, as great tzaddikim usually do when they come together. And they did that while the train was pulling into the next station. But then, just when the train stopped at the next station, what happened? The Ger Rebbe got up, excused himself, left the car, went out to the platform, and gave blessings and chizuk to the masses who stood there waiting for him. And when the whistle blew, he went back into the train, to the car where the Chafetz Chaim was sitting, and he sat down next to him in order to resume their discussion. Stunned at what he saw, the Chafetz Chaim turned to the Ger Rebbe and he says to him, Rebbe, you know that every time you get off the train and you have thousands of people waiting for you, the kavod, the honor that the people are bestowing upon you, is going to come out of your spiritual bank account in Olam Haba. After all, kavod, when a person receives kavod like this, it kind of takes away from his bank account. Meaning, the kavod, he told him, the honor you're receiving in this world is at the expense of your bank account in the next world. And then he said to him, look, I understand that you're blessing them and you're providing the people with inspiration, but you're losing in the process. The Ger Rebbe looked at the Chafetz Chaim in a quandary, and he said, Kvod Harav, there are times where it's worth it to lose a little bit of your Olam Haba just to be able to give a fellow Jew a little bit of chizuk. Do you hear this? This is the level that the tzaddikim were on. You see what Am Yisrael meant to them? These are the people that lived with the idea of the Gershom mindset. They lived with the attitude of, I'm so far from my people. They need me. Did I fulfill my mission? Did I deliver what I was supposed to for the people? Did I reach who I was supposed to? Did I help who I was meant to? Did I become what I know I'm supposed to become for the klal first, then for myself, and then for my family? Or maybe I'm still so foreign and so far away from what I was meant to do and meant to be. Maybe I relinquished my mission without even knowing. But listen to the end of this amazing story. Chafetz Chaim was so moved by the Ger Rebbe's words. He was so touched by the fact that the Rebbe actually said that it might be worth it to lose a little bit of your olam haba in order to be able to give chizuk to a fellow Jew, that when they arrived at the next station and the train stopped, as the Ger Rebbe walked out onto the platform to greet the multitudes of Jews waiting there, right behind him stood the Chafetz Chaim. This time, they both walked out onto that platform. They both gave the crowd their blessings. They both gave the people a little bit of hope and inspiration, because that's what it means to be a true Gershom. That's what it means to be a true Gadol. A person who's truly great realizes that his entire purpose here is to do, to give, to be there, and to think about the needs of other people. Gershom means to remind yourself always what it means to live for a purpose, for the purpose of others, to live through your calling. It's not enough to make sure I'm living a good life, that my children and my family are happy and well taken care of. No, I need to make sure we are all good, that all of Hashem's children are tended to and loved and well taken care of. That's Gershom. Am I so influenced by the foreign culture and the society around me that I forget my mission and where I truly belong? You know, I have so much faith in you ladies out there. You can do so much for our nation. Don't limit yourself to just your small little circle of people. When your hashkafa changes from a narrower viewpoint to a broader panoramic view outside of yourself, and you start thinking about your real purpose here, about your calling and your mission in life, when you begin to understand that you're not only here for yourself and your family, but for a mission that involves the whole of Am Yisrael, you know what's going to happen? You're going to realize how Kadosh Baruch Hu is suddenly providing you with renewed strength and abilities that you never thought were possible. But it has to begin by you caring enough to remind yourself and contemplate the idea of Gershom. I'm still so far from what I really could be doing. And then tell yourself, but I don't want to remain in this motionless place. I don't want to stay in the Eretz Nochriya. I want to grow. I want to become somebody that does something purposeful with the mission that she was given. I want to make a difference in Am Yisrael and among Am Yisrael. I don't want to remain a foreigner. I want to become a friend to my fellow brothers and sisters. Let me tell you about a rabbi who lived this reality and philosophy of Gershom. Rav Avram Kalmanovich, alav shalom, was a man who lived and bled for the Jewish people during World War II. Many of you may not know this, but towards the end of the war, the Germans began to already smell the end and their final defeat. One of Germany's allies was Mussolini, the Prime Minister of Italy. Mussolini was a fascist, he was a dictator. Mussolini heard that Germany was losing the war. He panicked and he began to literally auction off Jews for money. He was in contact with the Jewish activists in the United States, and he offered to let them purchase their fellow Jewish brothers for $100 a head. So saving Jewish people was a matter of money. You could save a Jew with $100. Now, the Jews in America at that time, they didn't know the nitty-gritty details of everything that took place during the war. They only found out after the war had ended. But at this time, the Rabbanim and a great number of people were crying and screaming and begging, please, we need to do something in order to save these Jewish people. Think about it, $1,000 at that time meant you could save 10 Jews. That means 10 families. Well, Rav Avram Kalmanovich was at the forefront of this campaign. He was running around from shul to shul, pleading and crying and appealing for people to help, to give donations, to offer some of their money in order to save our Jewish brothers and sisters. One Shabbat, he went to a shul on the Lower East Side and arrived in the middle of the tefillah. He approached the Gabbai and he says, please, you don't know what's going on. There's a Holocaust out there. Millions of Jews are being murdered. What we've heard about the Nazis, it's not a rumor. It's real. Please allow me to speak and appeal to your congregants so we could raise the funds necessary to save our brothers and sisters in Germany. That money can go towards the mitzvah of hatzalat nefashot, the saving of lives. Please allow me to address the people. The Gabbai looked at Rav Kalmanovich and he says, Rabbi, I'd love to let you speak, but the problem is that our shul has a policy that there's no soliciting of funds on Shabbat. If you want, you can come back during the week and we'll allow you to walk around and collect some money from the congregants, but there can be no official appeals on Shabbat. Rav Kalmanovich was shocked and he was starting to get all upset, and he says, I know you have shul policies, but you have to understand that our people are dying. Your brothers and sisters are being slaughtered every day. And the Gabbai said, Rabbi, I'm sorry, but we can't. We just can't let you speak. So now Rav Kalmanovich was all worked up. And at this point he says, look, please, just let me say one word. Let me get up and utter one word. That's all I ask from you. The Gabbai said, one word? That's it? Just one word? And the Rabbi says, yes, I'll say one word. That's it. So the Gabbai said, Rabbi, okay, I'll let you speak. But remember, you can only say one word. The Gabbai stood up with a huge smirk on his face. He gave a huge clap on the bima, and he asks everybody to sit down. And he turns to the congregation and he says, we have a great rabbi from Europe, and he's here to give us a one-word speech. And everybody started to giggle. What one-word speech could a rabbi possibly give? Rav Kalmanovich stood up. He looked around the room and into the eyes of these people, and he yelled out, help! And he fainted. Everybody jumped out of their chairs. They all ran up to make sure the rabbi was all right. They were trying to revive him and wake him up. When he finally came to, they asked, Rabbi, what happened? What's going on? Why did you yell for help? He turned to the large crowd and was waiting for his answer, and he screamed, they're murdering millions of our brothers and sisters in Europe. The congregants couldn't believe their ears. What? They pushed the rabbi aside and they asked the rabbi to speak. And he spoke. He spoke for the next 20 minutes. He gave a fiery speech explaining exactly what was taking place and how their money can save lives. Ladies, you don't know how many Jewish brothers and sisters were spared from that one Shabbat. But here we had somebody who wasn't ready to give up. He saw a cause and felt the purpose. He felt the commitment, and he got up and he fought for the life of his fellow Jews. That's the kind of person who doesn't live for himself, but he lives for the sake of other people. Ladies, in our Gilgul, in this incarnation of ours that we're living in right now, in this lifetime, we live only once. So why live small? We should live big. Why just work on you and what you need to do for you? Why not work on us, on Am Yisrael? If you do that, you'll be well taken care of. Think of what Hashem tells us. Hashem says, please take care of my children. If you take care of my children properly and with respect, I'll take care of your children properly and with respect. You know, in the Hakdama, in the introduction of the Khatam Sofer Alav Shalom's Sefer, he writes that people who go out and tend to the tzibur, which means those who tend to the public, to the masses, and to their needs, the ones who are so busy working and doing for Am Yisrael, living the Gershom dream, those people, says the Khatam Sofer, have a guaranteed promise from heaven that because they sacrificed so much of their own life and their own family, Hashem says, you took care of mine, I'll take care of yours. Shali, shalach, mine, you treated as if it was your own. Shalach, shali, I'm going to treat yours as though they were directly mine. Wow, that's unbelievable. You know, once upon a time in the olden days, there was a minhag, a custom, that when somebody made a wedding, they'd make sure to set up tables for the poor people to have what to eat. So the Baal Simcha wasn't only looking to enjoy the wedding for himself, his own family and guests, but he also set up tables for the Anim, for the poor people in the town, because he wanted everybody to be able to enjoy the celebration. And there's a famous story in the Gemara that you may have heard of. It's the story of Rabbi Akiva's daughter. On the night of her wedding, you have to understand this, it's her wedding, she herself set up tables for the poor people to be able to eat. Later that night, after the wedding, she came back into her bedroom, pulled out this long pin that was holding her hair up, and as was customary, she took the pin and she stuck it into the wall, since the walls were made out of very thin straw type of material. Okay? The following morning, when she came to take the pin out from the wall in order to gather her hair and put it under the kisui, she noticed that at the end of the pin was the head of a deadly snake. What she didn't know is that the night before, when she walked into that dark room, there was a gzera from Shamayim, there was a heavenly decree that she die on that night. and the snake was sent in order to kill her. But the Gemara concludes that because she herself set up tables for the poor people to be able to feast on at her wedding, because as she was preparing her own simcha, she wasn't only thinking just about herself but about others, because she didn't just want the simcha to be her own, but wanted to share it with others who were less fortunate than her, she merited the zchut to live. And when she pulled out the pin from her hair and stuck it into the wall, what she didn't realize is that she stuck the pin right between the eyes of that deadly snake, boom, killing it on contact. And she found out only the very next morning how she was saved. You know, in her case, tzedakah really saved her from mavet, from death. The point is that this is what it means to live, not just for yourself, but to be a selfless and great Jew, and to live bigger than just what's at the end of your own nose, at the end of your own garden, to extend yourself beyond your own little small circle. The life of a real Torah Jew is the life of a person who exudes passion. It's the person who's passionate and he displays enthusiasm and such, a joy about other people, doing for other people, caring for other people and their needs. It's the person who in very rough times, he steps up instead of stepping away. It's the kind of person who during nisyonot opens doors instead of closing them. That's the person who sees a very, very difficult challenge ahead and faces his fears instead of running away from it. So what am I asking from you? What am I asking from you? I'm asking you all to step up and to fulfill your purpose. I'm asking you to remember how genuine Moshe Rabbeinu was and how he named his son Gershom in order to remind himself how far he was from doing what he felt he was supposed to be doing. And that was Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest Navi that ever lived. He felt that he needed a reminder to get back on the path of his purpose. What should we say about ourselves? I mean, Moshe felt that he needs to remind himself that the Jewish people need him, that he has a great mission for which his life was spared. Naming his son Gershom was his way of saying, why am I living such a small life here in Midian when I'm meant to fulfill such a huge purpose? A few years ago, a man called his Rav, I happen to know the Rav, and he said, Rabbi, as you know, my daughter's getting married very soon, and I love her very much. And I'm wondering, if there's a sgula, something I can do that will be a great zchut, a great merit that will ensure that my daughter and her husband will have a good life, and that they'll give nachat ruach to Hashem. My wife and I, we want this young couple to get along and to build a Beit Ne'eman, a faithful Jewish home. I'll be able to sleep better at night knowing that my daughter married a true Bal Midot Tovot, because it's scary out there. You know, you marry a child off to somebody that appears a certain way, but then after the wedding, you discover another person. Rabbi, I'm sure you know this as every parent's fear. We don't want our children to chas v'shalom fall into a deep pit that they might not be able to climb out of. So what can I do for my daughter as a zechut for a successful marriage, that she should have true shalom bayit and have a good, solid, healthy marriage and be happy with her partner who's going to be a good man? Ladies, well, this man was basically asking the rabbi for an insurance policy on his daughter's marriage. Who wouldn't wish for someone to write them such a policy, right? Do they even exist? Let's see. The Rav answered this man as follows. There is one zgula I can think of. It's called Gershom. You know, you're so worried about your own daughter and her marriage. But what are you ready to do for someone else's daughter and her marriage? You know, I know an organization that helps fund weddings for hundreds of orphans in Eretz Yisrael. And the way it works is that on the night that your daughter's getting married, that same night they marry off one of the girls who either has no parents or is so poor that she cannot afford a wedding. So the same night that your daughter's getting married in America, for just $5,000, they're marrying off a poor girl or boy, orphan boy or girl in Eretz Yisrael. And somehow they managed to pull off the entire wedding for $5,000. Obviously it's a very low budget wedding, but there is a wedding and nothing is lacking. He says, so listen, you want everything to work out with your daughter. You want her to have the best life. You want her to be happy. You want her wedding to be a night she'll never forget, and that it should be the beginning of the most amazing marriage. You want that for your daughter, no? Well, do it for somebody else's daughter, and Hashem will take care of your daughter. Gershom, he says to him, live bigger and wider than just your own circle. Go out there and do what you know you should be doing in your shlichut, in your mission for Am Yisrael. That's your zgula. As you could imagine, the man stayed silent for a few seconds, and he says, okay, Rabbi, give me the number of this organization. The rabbi gave him the number, and the man called to sponsor a wedding that would take place on the same night as his daughter's wedding. And lo and behold, there was indeed an orphan girl who happened to be getting married on that same night. This man who spent $150,000 on his daughter's wedding in America ended up sending not $5,000, $8,000 to Eretz Yisrael because he wanted the orphan girl to have the more expensive wedding package. And on the night of his daughter's wedding, you have no clue how good this man felt. He felt as though he didn't just think about himself and his daughter. He didn't only consider his own child, but somebody else's child. And he walked his daughter down the aisle with a feeling of purpose and with tears in his eyes. Not because he was marrying off his daughter, that's a given, but that he had the zechut to tend to somebody else's daughter, that he had the merit to help the Ribono Shel Olam's daughter. And that filled his entire night with vigor, with vitality, and with a purpose. Gershom wasn't living for himself and just his surroundings, but he was living for the sake of others as well. By the way, that's the difference between pleasure versus happiness. When you eat a good steak, it gives you pleasure, but it doesn't make you happy. When you buy a nice car, you get pleasure from it, but that's not happiness. When you go on a vacation with your husband, you might enjoy yourself and feel a little pleasure, but that doesn't mean that you have happiness with your spouse. If you want real happiness in your life, it's not going to come from things that you create externally, from the trips that you take, from gatherings in your home, from little quotes that you read on people's statuses about how happiness is a choice. No, I have news for you. You know how they always told us happiness is a choice? It's not a choice. It's an active process. What process? Chachamim tell us what kind of process it is. They tell us like this: Simcha, real happiness, comes from a place of spiritual elevation. You want to be happy? It's not going to come from the external things, the things that you do from the outside that you think are going to make you feel happy from within. It comes from the inside out. Happiness does not come from the surroundings. It comes from the fact that your spirit, your pnimiyut, your neshama is being heightened and channeled where? Upwards, towards Shamayim, towards your purpose, which was founded up above to begin with. That's where you're going to find true simcha. True simcha comes from engaging in and activating yourself to be involved in things that have a spiritual purpose. Because inside of you, your neshama yearns to connect to that purpose. And that's something that money can never buy. That's something that a vacation will never afford you. That's something that goes beyond pleasure, and it fills your being with great joy. Because engaging in the world of spirituality and bringing it to life and then doing for the sake of others through your ruhaniyut makes you feel not only a great sense of accomplishment, but a feeling that you fulfilled your tachlit. And a person who's fulfilling his purpose in the world has true simcha. He has genuine happiness. Being spiritually purposeful gives you the most genuine feeling of simcha and more. It propels you to a place where you want to live bigger, where you're not just happy being where you are, where you want to suddenly widen your circle and inspire others, many, many others. You want to just get up and share the spiritual wealth. Happiness in the world of Judaism isn't found only from within. It starts from within in terms of elevating yourself spiritually, but the mechanism goes outwards from without, which means in helping others outside of yourself, outside of your inner circle. When you do for yourself, you might find some pleasure in that. But when you do for others, you find happiness. So when my students tell me, I keep chasing after happiness, I want to be happy, I'm always busy running after it, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with that, I'm not happy with my husband, I tell them, you're not chasing after happiness. You're running after pleasure, which is momentary and it fades. You see, your problem, I tell them, is that you think that a moment of pleasure means happiness, but it's not. You think that a few days of enjoyment that you had somewhere with your husband, vacationing somewhere, means you're now happy. No, that was just pleasure. It wasn't happiness. You think because you had a few laughs, it means you're in a happier mode. No. You're receiving pleasure maybe from that joke, from that setting, but pleasure doesn't mean happiness. Oneg is not simcha. It's two separate things. That's why you keep running and running and running, and you're getting tired. And you don't know why you're tired. You're tired because you're not truly happy. Yet you haven't yet found true happiness. You're only experiencing momentary moments of pleasure. But that's not happiness. If you want to find happiness, if you want to be happy, you have to be involved in the world of spirituality. You have to be giving not only to yourself and those in your Dalet Amot, but to everyone else in Am Yisrael. And not only the people you choose to give to. If you want to experience happiness, you need to stop being selective and be more inclusive. You need to be engaged in spiritual endeavors that will elevate your spirit. That's when you'll feel happiness. Happiness comes from a place deep within that wants to fulfill a spiritual purpose from without. A person who feels spiritually purposeful is truly happy. Is truly happy. Gershom. Living for the sake of others and fulfilling your spiritual purpose. Bringing to life the reason for which you were brought down to the world. The reason you were spared from maybe a tragedy. And realizing that you're here to deliver a message to others. You're here to help others. You're here to promote others. You're here to escort others. And that you're here to usher in a great era in Am Yisrael. And that's the era of the Geulah. Be'ezrat Hashem, with all of your selfless efforts and fulfillment of your true self, you will not only be zeicha to greet the Mashiach, Be'ezrat Hashem, but you'll feel a true happiness knowing that you helped to redeem Hashem's children from this galut. And in that merit, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will afford you continued blessings, extended happiness, and then you'll feel the ultimate oneg and the epitome of pleasure. Be'ezrat Hashem bekarov. Amen ken. Yehi ratzon.